You are writing about children and technology. Yeah. So your introduction in the literature review, you may say something like, okay, there are many research done on technologies and its implication on the children, and this research has been in different perspective or area of specialization, and this is one pertinent title or research or issues to be examined in contemporary study. And very simple, 3, 4 lines would be good for your introduction in the literature review. And then you start entering into, the reason why you are conducting this research, because you found that they have yet, enough materials, there are shortcomings in the existing literature on what, so on and so forth. Yeah? So you are doing this. In the course of doing this research, you have referred to several sources. Okay. Now, for example, Haslina and Hannah wrote in certain book, yeah, and defining technologies. Another scholar by the name of Alia wrote this and stating that, technology started this at the end of that uh, what you call the exposition of the resources, you can see that these articles have helped the researcher in defining the meaning of technology. So this is how you benefit from that article. Yeah, and then maybe you want to exert about certain findings, and you say that there are a number of resources that expose or that have completed a field work on the impacts of technologies to the children. So maybe one article discuss about the impact on the psychological impact, on the educational impact, on the spiritual impact. Okay? So maybe you want to say, finally after exposing them, you say, so these three have given, varieties of examples on how technologies impacted children. This research will benefit from this, your research will benefit from this article because they are giving the plethora or the examples of how technologies can affect the life of the children at the young age. So you see, don't forget about, bringing back how these literatures help you in this research, or perhaps how this, you say for example, this research talk about the definition, talk about the examples of effects technology had towards the children, but there are avenues whereby these literatures did not cover. For example, article ABC discuss about the impacts, but the author did not discuss about how to overcome or how to help the children, what kind of assistance needed to give to the children who are affected by the technology. Maybe one another type of article discuss a lot about the phenomenon of addiction towards technologies among the children, especially the gadgets. Yeah. So they are only stating the phenomenon. Unfortunately, they did not give alternative on how to. And then you see, of all these articles, they are still lacking research done on how Islam helps parents to guide their children in adapting with the technology. This research, therefore, then you are explaining about the gap. This research, therefore, and you do this at the end of your research. So you see, um, it's not summarizing the article per se. And you have also to gauge. For example, just now I read that, okay, you give too many details about the book. You're not going to communicate the books yet. You're going to discuss that in your chapter. Let's say, for example, you give, okay, the classification or the classification of the categories of age, the children's development. The author A say this, the author B say this, the author C. But actually, I mean, you need not to be, communicate in details, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, no. So you can just say that three authors have different ideas about the category or the child category in the children age in terms of their adaptability to changes. Yeah. So these categories will be used to analyze to what extent that technology impacted the children much, or in what age that the children were impacted much by the technology. So you make use of this category because you want to see in the chapter, you want to compare between the three, which particular age that the children are mostly impacted. So you're not going to discuss them in the literature review. Alright, so you see, basically, one good thing I noticed in Viva, normally the researcher will understand very much why he write the research. Yeah, because when he explain the literature review in the Viva, then he will be able to demonstrate how this material helped me in this research. Sometimes in the Viva is much better than the thesis, because I think after the researcher has read his own work, then he try to simplify it, then only he is clear about what he wants to do in the research. But unfortunately, that come only after the research is completed. I mean, that's normal lah. But for PhD thesis, is alhamdulillah, you can still improve it, because after the Viva, you're going to work on your thesis again for the correction. Well, for master thesis is also the same. You can do the correction after your examiner has take a look at it. But just remember, when you want to do the proposal, try to see the flow of your work, and because in the defense you have also to explain this. Normally in the defense, you will be asked what is the RO, what is the RQ, together, and what is the statement of your problem, and what is new in your research. And then why do you refer to particular book? Why certain books are not listed in your literature, for example? Especially if you are writing on the area whereby this area are the specialization of the lecturers who are in the defense. So you must make sure that you have covered the relevant books, the important books in the literature. All right. So that you will I have written to you your literature review. Sometimes I put question mark. I guess you are guided by my inputs. Another observation is that I think because most of you have in your mind, but you do not know how to express it. I think you have problems of expressing yourself. Most of the works that I've read, because you have problems in expressing yourself, and I know very sure that you know what you want, but you know problems of expressing it using academic words. But this is what you call that, this is the process, don't worry. um, Once when you have this very draft of proposal and you are given a supervisor, he will be able to help you. Because I sit in the defense meeting, and I've seen my students presenting their proposal in the defense, and I think in research methodology, they were in my research methodology class, I think they're much clearer. I think by 70 and 80% clearer in comparison to the first draft that they submitted in my class. So Alhamdulillah, I think it's a due process lah. It's a due process. Alright, so next PG meeting, I want to see some of you have already decided the title and submit nomination form of supervisor to the PG committee at my department lah. This one I can control. but I can also know if you are submitting, if you're from other departments, because I'm chairing the PGC, Kuliah for Credit Committee meeting. I will know if you have been nominated a supervisor because the name will be tabled in the PGC. So next meeting in December, well, in Suludin we have had this meeting this morning, so maybe in January. So I want to see that you have decided the title and nominate, decided at least a draft of the title, nominate a supervisor and start working on your proposal. Yeah, then don't worry. I think most of you have got the title right, including you, Miss Buff. Just a matter of how to polish your proposal, and your supervisor will be able to help you. I mean, I will not be able to help you in a very detailed manner. First, because I'm not your supervisor. Secondly, it will take a lot of my time to do that in a very detailed manner. In fact, for information, I've been spending a lot of time reading your stuff here, but this semester I have 10 students. I think I can bear the number lah. Last semester I have more than 10, so I couldn't. No need. I couldn't bear the number, so I didn't focus much like I do this semester. So okay, that's enough for for today. We
Ma'am,
get to the
last
literature
question I
review.
had about the literature review. Should we leave any comments on the literature review? Like maybe I wrote some comments. This literature is not much related, or any gaps. Should we leave any comment on the literature review while uh,
Um,
talk about the literature?
we'll discuss it in different section. Maybe between you and me. No
Okay.
need to discuss it because we will not be able to cover the course outline. I'm so afraid we are now in week 8 already, right? We are left with 4 weeks. Okay, let's talk about research sampling and conducting pilot study. I think some of you are going to do fieldwork, so I think you need to have this. Yeah, that's why I rush into this one. So, what is research sampling? Okay, for those who want to do that want to do field work, then you need to have sample. Sample is very essential for your field work, and you need to determine your sample. So for this one, okay, I'm showing you this sampling methods. From now on, you can think of the type of samples that you want to choose for your um, research. Okay, I stopped sharing this one because I want to go to this article. I thought that this article is very good, and we should read this article. Okay, what is that? Start to design or not start to design person? No, sorry. Okay, here. Hmm, what is that? Good reading for sampling. Okay. Can you see the article now?
Yes, Maria.
Alright, so let's go to this sampling method. The article is very good article, precise and straightforward. Um, so why do you need a sample? Because obviously you cannot cover all the respondents, all the populations lah in the context of your research. Your sample will be called population, yeah. But then you cannot cover the whole population. Say for example, even when you're talking about IIUM students, you will not be able to cover IIUM students. They are like what 20 something 30 something students in IUM, the population in IUM, so students population in IUM. So you need to have a sample, yeah, and you can divide your sample into probable or non-probable. Okay, but before we go to this type of sampling, let us go to the step by step. if you are doing field work. Yeah? So, like for example, Abdul Karim, I don't know Abdul Karim whether he is going to do field work or not, but I think, apa I cannot recall now, but I think Brother Abdullah is doing field work, yeah. So, now, for example, Brother Abdullah is doing on the two house of no house of worship, Muslims rehab center and Buddhist rehab center. So basically, he has a clear defined target population. Yeah. So in your case, kan, it's non-probability sampling. So you have targeted population already. Yeah. And you select sampling frame, but of course the two institutions still big for you, so you need to take the sample if you want to interview the persons who are under the rehab, yeah, at the center. But if you are not interviewing them, you are only interviewing the administrators of the center, then you need not to plan for the sample, because you are not asking for the people, but you are asking basically the method adopted by the administrator of that rehab center. But of course, if you can consider, for example, asking the persons, that will be an added value or a merit to your research, except that depends on your budget lah and depends on the time that you have. Okay? All right. And then you choose the sampling technique, because once when you have the sampling frame, like Brother Abdullah very clear lah. Who else? Who else are doing? Maybe I'm not so sure about Misbah, because you talk about the disabled kan. So this is also very tricky, because disabled not many populations. But maybe
Yeah.
but maybe you want to go to certain school that have disabled, or certain higher institution that have disabled. So you want to see how the
Yes,
disabled in the
I have a plan to interview from
it
someone.
doesn't matter, brother. I'm giving examples because
Okay.
first you need to have the sampling frame. So now, for example, you are going to either the higher institution, or either you're going to the government agencies. Yeah? But you cannot have too wide. You don't determine altogether. Even if you say in Dhaka is too big. So if that is the situation, your sampling frame have to be uh, very precise, because you it's very difficult for you to have the non-probability sampling in Dhaka, very big. How are you going to? I mean, the what do you call, the likelihood for you to not be able to get the research findings is very high, because you do not have a sample frame. You need to have a sample frame. Yeah. So, like I said just now, either you go to school, or either you go to government agencies, or either, I don't know, where else in Bangladesh. You should know better where you can find. Like for example, in Malaysia, we have one headquarters or society for the blind people. So if you are doing it in Malaysia, then maybe you can go to this persatuan, to this association or society for the blind people in Bangsa. So you know that is your sample. But then your sample is very limited to people who are blind, not people who are bounded to wheelchair, not people who have what do you call that, who have learning problems, for example. You see, so you see, even types of disability also varies. So you cannot just lump everybody, every people who are disabled together, because different disability is very special. They are special people, so they have special needs. So maybe you you can be either in terms what you can do, maybe in terms of the policies, if you want to make it very general, in terms of the policies alone. Yeah. So that for you to figure out lah. I'm not able to help you. Okay, and then choose sampling technique. Like I said just now, probability, non-probability. So we will. This is what we are going to discuss today. And then determine the sample size. Like in the case of Brother Mispa, of course you will not be able to have a more size or bigger size because I mean the population of people who are disabled in the university, in the government agencies, in the school are not many. Maybe the most you can get five. That will be your sample size. Yeah. So it depends. Like for example, Brother Abdullah, we'll see lah how big it is that the rehab center. Maybe rehab center for the Muslims is bigger or the Buddhist is bigger. But then you may need to have a commensurate number of sample size. Yeah? And once when you are able to identify this, then only you can do collection of data. For Misbah, if you are discussing about the government policies, then maybe you need not to do field work. But your research will deal mainly with the government policies, with the government policies, or maybe only based on the literatures about what are the difficulties faced by the disabled people as exposed in the literature. So that can be done also. It's not going to be empirical research or field work here, but only limited to studying the policies, government policies, and studying the literatures that explain about the difficulties of the disabled people. This can be done also, so not necessarily empirical research. So once when you are able to collect the data, the last but not least step is to study the data. To first of all, if it is interview, you have to transcribe it. If it is using a SPSS, then you have to put it in what key in the data in SPSS, and then only you can run the analysis. So after you have got all the response, do what is necessary um, to arrange the response, yeah, and then analyze the response. And after you analyze the response, you need to write it in your thesis. Okay, so the first stage is that you need to have a clearly defined target population, which is challenging. For example, one proposed topic is about parenting and towards children at the age of technology. So, who are going to be your target population if you are doing it field work lah? So, who are your target population? Bear in mind that parents vary lah in terms of their economic background, in terms of their educational background. If you jumble out their background, then that may affect the reliability of their data, because obviously those who are educated and those who are not educated will have different ways of handling their children. Yeah, those with good income record, less income record, will have different ways of dealing with their children. Yeah, maybe for the low income bracket, they didn't have the technology at home, they didn't have the gadget at home, didn't have internet at home. But does that mean that the children are deprived from the technology? Maybe the children go to the cyber cafe, maybe the children watch with their friends, yeah, so on and so forth. Yeah. So you really need to have a very clear target population. Okay, and stage two, select sampling frame. Um, like I said just now, you need to have a picture, and then if you say, for example, you think you don't want to be bothered with too many, then maybe you have to indicate clearly in the title among the educated parents. Okay, among the how do you call it? How do you call, it's not poor lah. among the less fortunate or the lower income uh, parents, for example. So you already give the frame to your research. You want to study the educated one, or you want the less to the lower income one. So you have the frame already. Okay, now we go to a more specific type of sample. Yeah, this sampling technique. So there are two, probability and non-probability. Yeah, or sometimes it is called random sampling and non-random sampling. Let's take a look at probability and non-probability in a generic manner. I mean, by looking at the term probable, you know what it means, okay? Probability means that you kind of determine the type of respondents, the type of sample. So you have certain identified targets. But non-probability, you do not have certain target uh, respondents or sample, but but uh, um, uh, your target in this sense, I think, is structured. Structured. You don't have a structured way of determining or deciding or finding your sample. So you will just get hold of whoever that serve your research. But then this must have significant to your research title. I mean, you cannot just simply pick people on the streets. Nah. But you need also to have some ideas, except that you do not have it in a very structured manner. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the generic meaning of probability sampling. Yeah? So probability sampling is that when you are determined that everybody has the equal chance to be your sample. Say for example, you're talking about the sample in Gombak. So how many populations in Gombak? Say for example, 500,000 population in Gombak, which means that every single 500,000 has the chance to be your sample. Has the chance, not necessarily that you go to them. Yeah? Has the chance to be the sample, but then you are going to utilize certain technique to distribute the chance. To distribute the chance. Of course, the best is to have everybody, but this is wishful thinking and this is too ideal. This is not realistic as far as empirical field work is concerned. So this is probability sampling because you identify for people, this is your sample, framing of sampling, people in Gombak, 500,000 of them. So among them will be your sample. Um, okay, so under this probability sampling, you have simple, random, stratified, cluster. Let's take a look. What are these means? Yeah. So, for example, simple random sampling. So sample in Gombak, for example, every case of the population has an equal probability of inclusion. Disadvantages associated with simple random sampling is, of course, you need to know how many people in Gombak. That you have to go to the Malaysian Statistics Department. I remember a research done with my friend FRGS 2 years ago. It was completed recently in the fundamental research grant. This is a research by the Malaysian National Higher Education. The researcher proposed to study about how the people in Kuala Lumpur understand interreligious dialogue. Yeah? So he suggested for 8,000 respondents. 8,000 respondents, because based on the statistic, 8,000 is an acceptable proportion of the population in Kuala Lumpur. Yeah? That's why the proposal was approved by the Minister of Higher Education. But then when we sit down, we found it's going to be very taxing for 2 years research to have 8,000 respondents in Kuala Lumpur, especially when we talk about the time, when we talk about the funding that are granted to us. We were given, I think, 60 or 58,000 and 2 years time to cover. So you see, even 8,000 with 60K is not enough. You see, so finally the person had to redo the budgeting and submit the new budgeting and the new research methods to the KPT, to the Ministry of Higher Education, because it's very impossible to cover. Even 8,000 is not proportionate to Kuala Lumpur, um, what they call that, population, because the population in Kuala Lumpur is estimated to 2.3 million. Yeah. So 8,000 does not commensurate the total population. So she had to reduce the frame. Yeah. In some studies such as survey by representative, because obtaining the sample can be high if the units are geographically widely scattered. Yeah, like in Kuala Lumpur, say for example 8,000, but you know that, for example, Gombak population is different if you compare to where Bangi population, Putrajaya, for example. Where else? Or Sentul. So it's very difficult, very tricky to get the population in this. They are very scattered. Some are very dense, some are not very dense. Like if you go to where, if you go to Sentul is very dense. Titi Wangsa not so much dense. Gombak is very dense. So very difficult. Yeah. And the standard errors of estimators can be high. What is standard error of estimators? I mean, you estimate the population, right? You estimate the respondents, the number of respondents in your thinking, commensurate the population. But bear in mind that, say, for example, the number you estimated is not commensurate to the population, then the likelihood for your how do I say, for the standard deviation will be very high. For example, the okay, the lesser the number, the likelihood the standard error is. Say for example, you have 5 respondents, can, and you know that you have, say, the scale, you have 4 scale, good, very good, good, poor, very poor. But then you have 5 respondents only, right? Uh, so you see that there is likelihood that the 5 respondents do not agree uh, or choose different answer. Just imagine if the 5 respondents, 3 of them choose very good and 2 of them choose very poor. So you see, when you calculated the mean between the respondents, you will have very big gap between the respondents which is very good and very poor. Very difficult for me to explain. So why? Because it does not represent the population. Because your population is very small. In comparison, if you have, say, for example, 100 respondents compared to 5 respondents, right? So of course, the 100 respondents, you can uh, um, there will be diverse answer from among the respondents. Some of them will choose, good. Some of them will choose poor. Some of them will choose very. So the 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 distribution is fair. The distribution is fair. Okay, so the standard deviation will be reasonable because varieties of answers among the respondents. Or in certain cases, if you can find, if they are still, say for example, all the respondents choose very poor, or most of the respondents choose very poor, only few respondents choose very good, then you know that it is the determinator of that answer. Yeah, even though the determinator is not or there is a big gap between the determinator and the mean of the respondents. I'm talking from the perspective of statistical analysis. Yes, statistical analysis. But what standard error is all about is actually to make sure that you have a reliable sample. Yeah. Okay. So go back to simple random sampling here. Is that the rule of the thumb is this? The rule of the thumb. If you are adopting simple random sampling where you have a very big area to cover and you do not have enough money to interview everybody, which definitely will be the case, try to have as many respondents as possible. Okay, that is the rule of the thumb. The higher respondents, the lesser the error. Yeah, the standard error. Okay, so this is about simple random sampling. Okay, whereby you have very big, population. Yeah, because you want to include everybody. Okay, another one is systematic sampling. What is systematic sampling? Systematic sampling is, say for example, you want to go to Gombak and then you, okay lah, I will go to every house, every fifth number in order. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you go to the house number 5. Okay, for example here, consumers, every free consumer, like you go to the supermarket and you want to get the respondents, you go to the supermarket, you go to the counter, okay, every fifth customer, you stop them, can you please do this? Every fifth customer, yeah, so that is a very systematic way of sampling. I think in terms of supermarket is still manageable lah kan, it's still logical lah. But say for example, if you want to have the fifth number of the house, it's like Alibaba Bujang Lapuk case lah. I don't know if you have listened to the story of Alibaba kan, the house with what do you call that, with cross, then you attack the house with cross for example. But in this case you go to maybe houses with even number address. For example, you go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, or you go to the odd number address, 3, 7, 9, for example. This is called systematic sampling. Yeah. um, I think normally what do you call that? Yes, corporate sector lah, especially business oriented company will do this sampling to test their product. Okay, and stratified random sampling. What is stratified random sampling? You divided your respondents into subgroups, like in Gombak. So you have a few districts in Gombak kan. So you divided them based on the districts, yeah. And a random sample is taken from each subgroup, yeah. So for example, here maybe based on company size, gender, occupation, yeah. Um, so stratified sampling is often used where there is a great deal of variation within a population. Its purpose is to ensure that every stratum is adequately represented. So let's think about these parents just now. How are you going to adopt stratified random sampling? Okay, maybe you go to school and you ask the teachers if you can get, but normal, this is quite difficult lah because the data of the parents are confidential kan. But say for example you want to go to Sungai Pusu area kan, population. Who do you ask? Maybe the penghulu. Maybe the penghulu. I don't know what penghulu is in English. Then you ask the penghulu, then the penghulu will be able to help you to give, say for example, this is very good income bracket family. This is less, lesser group, lesser income bracket family. So that is stratified sampling. But you need to know your sample lah, how divided they are, how divided they are. Yes. So in case of parents, I can only at the moment think of their income brackets lah, the easiest one because normally, but not most of the time. Normally, income bracket also reflects their educational background. So maybe, the higher income bracket uh, shows the level of education they have. Yeah, the lower income bracket, the lower education they have. So we can get certain level of these parents, and we can estimate their answers to our questions. So the estimation of the answers is also important, but this we will discuss later on why you need to estimate the answers, because you want to test. You want to test. Okay, what? Now, cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is where the whole population is divided into clusters or groups. A random sample is taken from these clusters, all of which are used in the final sample. Cluster sampling is advantageous for those researchers whose subjects are fragmented over large geographical areas, as it saves time and money. So you depend on the cluster. Hmm. Now we're talking about cluster. It's so phobic, yeah, claustrophobic now. We're just talking about the epidemic cluster, COVID-19 cluster. Okay, so for example, how do we go about it if you're talking about, mm, population in Gombak? Population in Gombak, then you have to cluster them. You have to cluster them and then you pick among the cluster. I mean, it's even going deeper in the cluster. Maybe how? Maybe okay. You want to cluster the parents according to those who are the masjid goers. Those who go to the masjids lah. Parents who go to the masjid. Parents who go to the masjid. But of course, there are many parents going to the masjid, right? So you go to all the masjid available in Gombak, and you pick from among the parents. So you go to the masjid, Masjid Rahimah, Masjid Simpang Tiga, Masjid Al Khairiyah. What else masjid you have? Many masjids in Gombak, and you interview the parents. But then it's not going to be income bracket case tau. Because you are targeting for masjid goers, parents who go to the masjid. Why? Okay, on the assumption that parents who go to the masjids more religiously oriented. So you want to see if religiously oriented parents have better technique or parenting style to their children. Alright, okay, so that's about cluster. Okay, multi-stage sampling, a process of moving from broad to a narrow sample using a step-by-step process. Some of the graph, some of the exposition on probability sampling I read did not have multi-stage sampling, because whether you notice or not, some of this like cluster sampling, stratified random sampling also uh, in needs of multi stage sampling. So some author did not have this multi-stage sampling, but this author regards multi-stage sampling. So, for example, a Malaysian publisher of an automobile magazine, this is when you have very huge sample, were to conduct a survey, it could simply take a random sample of mobile owners within the entire Malaysian population. Yeah, especially with Google form, kan very easy to do a random sampling. Obviously, this is both expensive and time consuming because you want everybody, right? A cheaper alternative would be to use multi-stage. How? This would involve dividing Malaysia into a number of geographical regions. So, most likely, northern region, eastern, western, and southern region. But still, region pun is very big. So some of these regions are chosen at random and then subdivisions are made perhaps based on local authority areas. So even northern region divided it into sections. Yeah, how many sections? Appropriate sections lah. Next, some of these are again chosen at random and then divided into smaller areas. So after you divide the region into, say for example, 5 sections, and you narrow down the section. One section you narrow further, yeah. Such as towns, cities. Yeah. The main purpose of multi-stage sampling is to select samples which are concentrated in a few geographical regions. So this is especially when you have very big sample, multi-stage sampling. Okay, why is important to know all this type of sampling? Because you're going to explain this in your methodology. If you put my sample is systematic sampling, that give weightage to your research method. So whether you notice or not, you talk about probability sampling, you talk about certain group of people and they have equal chance to be your respondents. What about non-probability sampling? This is sometimes people confused that non-probability is convenient sampling. No, convenient sampling is one of the subcategory of non-probability sampling. Let's take a look at non-probability sampling. Yeah? Associated with case study research. Like for example, Abdullah, yours is non-probability sampling, and qualitative research. Maybe if Misbah is doing interview with the disabled, it's a non-probability sampling. Case study tends to focus on small samples. So you have very identified, sorry, you, it's not that you identified them, but you do not have them in a large scale. So you do not have in a large scale because of certain criteria that make it necessary to zoom into this group of people to examine a real life phenomenon, so on and so forth. For example, Viva that I attended recently, I was the examiner. So the student conducted research, a field work on Muslims, divorced parents in Malawi, divorced parents in Malawi, and what happened after the divorce. Did the parent who reverted to Islam, remain in Islam or left religion? And what about the children? Will the children follow the religion of the mother or the religion of the father? So he used non-probability sampling because why he interview. Of course, you cannot have the sample, big sample, right? Not everybody divorced. So, non-probable, so he will have to look for those who are married, with different religion, and then the spouse reverted to Islam, but divorced, and then, the spouse remain in Islam or left Islam. So, what do you do if you have this type of sample or you need to deal with this type of sample? Maybe maybe in Misbah case, for example, the disabled. So you want to interview people with children, disabled children, right? So it's a non-probability sampling. So you need to identify them. Yeah, you need to identify them. So let's go and see if we can give example based on the category. Quota sampling is a non-random sampling technique in which participants are chosen on the basis of predetermined characteristics. Yeah, so they are not probable. Why? Because it's a not a general phenomenon, very limited phenomenon, disabled lah, divorce lah kan. But then you have certain characteristics that explain that. Like just now, divorce, whether remain or not remain Islam, parents with disabled children, yeah. So that the total sample will have the same distribution of characteristics. So you have similar characteristics in the sample. Like for example, the student who study about uh, parents, divorced parents in Malawi, kan? So all the respondents have the same criteria. Same criteria. And then snowball sampling. This is very interesting sampling technique in non-probability sampling. So for example, like this, Miss Ba, you have, one particular family with disabled child, and then you ask this family, do you have any or do you know anyone or any in your context that they also have disabled children? Can you relate me with them? So I can interview them, or could you please ask if they are willing to become my respondents? Yeah. And then when you say, for example, you get this respondent, you ask the respondent, do you have any friends? And this respondent say, yes, I have. So this is snowball technique, whereby you do not know them from the very beginning yet, but as you do the research, you manage to gather them based on the characteristics that you have stipulated, yeah, for this research. Okay, and the most easiest one, as you can see from the title, from the name, is convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is you go to the supermarket and you go to, sir, can you please help me? Or you say to your parents, please join me in this research and help to answer the survey. Or you ask your friend, please be my respondents. They are often readily and easily available. This convenience sampling tends to be a favorite sampling technique among students. Yeah. Why? Because it is easy and because you find people who you know and closer to you, you need not to give them certain token lah kan. So you need not to spend. So that's why it is inexpensive, easy, compared to other sampling techniques. Convenience sampling often helps to overcome many of the limitations associated with research. But you cannot also um, adopt this in any of the research. You have to be reasonable why you want to do it. Why you want to do it. Yeah? Mm, normally when I do my research, um, once I do my research, I adopt convenience sampling and also I adopt not simple random system. I adopt I think cluster sampling. Yes, cluster sampling. So probability plus non-probability at the same time. So when I went to Negeri Sembilan, I wanted to find the young people's perceptions and tendency to apostasy, yeah, or to have problems in faith. So I use non-probability sampling, convenience sampling. Um, when I ask my enumerators, my research assistants to go to the shopping complex. Shopping complex. I say go on Saturday and Sunday. Only look for the young people at the age of 18 to 25. So they have to make some estimation lah, the age of the respondents. But then also I make a probability sample. I go to the army camp, yeah, because army camp they have uh, young people, yeah, at the age of 19 to 26. Yeah? So I have from the soldiers, and then I go to the, where else I go? I went to the college. Yeah? I went to the college, and another one I don't remember. Where did I go? I don't remember. So you see, I combine between non-probability and probability. So I have a number of respondents, a number group of respondents. I have made different type of analysis as well. I combined the three of them and I divided the three of them. So I can test my findings, whether my findings are different or the same. Very interesting. Okay. And then purposive or judgmental sampling, a strategy which particular settings, persons or events are selected deliberately in order to provide important information that cannot be obtained. Say for example, recently when we conducted a research, I and my research group conducted a research on religious freedom and the tendency to live religion among the young people in Malaysia. So we suggested to one person to interview the sisters in Islam, yeah, and the liberal groups in Malaysia. So it's a judgmental sampling because we can expect some of their answers because they are liberal and they are very free and easy in terms of their understanding of religion. So this is what called as purposive and judgmental sampling. All right. Any question before I carry on? For those who are not doing empirical research or field work, don't think that this is not useful to you. Because maybe one day you need to do field work. So at least if you give attention, later when you want to do field work, you can you read again. Yeah, this will make sense to you. So you can basically, or at least if you read articles that talk about all these type of jargon or terms, you will be able to understand. Yeah, so I know because in the last 2, 3 semesters, I teach IRK students. Some of them just show me the face. I don't care. They don't want to learn because in their mind they want only to do textual study, library research, no more field work. Oh, as a researcher, you should not behave in such a way. Yeah, because maybe you don't want to conduct research of that nature, but maybe you need to read articles of that nature. So if you're not familiar with the term, you will deprive yourself from the resources, and that is too bad. It's too bad. All right, especially in terms of your research, because you are not able to cover as many good works possible. Of course, all these samples are not perfect sample. They have weaknesses. Is anybody trying to ask anything?
Madam,
Yeah, yes.
if we want to pursue our studies in PhD level, is it better for us to do fieldwork research than textual research or library research?
Hannah, can you repeat? I missed the word just now. If we,
Or
hmm.
if I want to continue study in PhD level, is it better for me to do fieldwork research, to do the empirical
Hmm.
research more?
Oh, okay. Um, It depends on the objectives lah, Hana. At the end of the day, what is the objective of your research? I mean, the objective of your research will determine the best methods. So I won't say that library research is not good, empirical is better. No, but depends on the objective. If your objective, for example, you want to measure the impact, definitely if you do library research, you will not be able to attain the objective. You need to do empirical work if you want to measure the impact. Yeah? If you want to do historical analysis, of course you have to do library research, you have to do textual study. You cannot do empirical research, right?
Yeah.
So tak. So if you want to know the historical development, then you need to do library research. So it depends on the objective.
Mm,
So
I thought
yes,
that empirical research is better than library research.
I won't say that because when I did my master's and PhD pun, I did library research. Yeah?
Mm,
And I benefited a lot from my research. Depends on the objective again. But most importantly, Hannah, the ability to learn and to adapt the method should be there. It doesn't matter whether at the early stage of your research experience or at the later stage of your experience. I want to tell you that this morning I had a meeting with the postgraduate students, right? Yeah? We were discussing about one particular title that we thought is good if the researcher try to do empirical research, yeah? Because the title seems to be more compatible to do empirical instead of, for example, the title that talk about Arkanul Iman and its impact on al-akhlaq, on ethics. How are you going to do library research with that title? Isn't it? But the student and the supervisor say, oh, this can be done, this library research alone, not necessarily empirical research. So you cannot do much lah if some of the researchers, some of the teachers are very fanatic and obsessed with particular research method. You cannot talk much. But at the end of the day, I think I pity the student because, well, maybe the lecturer have, I mean, like for me, almost 50 years old now. I have like 5 years to retire, right? So it's okay like if I don't learn new technique, new method. But my student will not be able to learn because I'm too fanatic. I impose my method to the student. I actually deprive the student from learning. Of course, student learn from the lecturer, right? But if the lecturer is not willing to give himself the chance of learning other technique, appreciating other techniques, then the student will be affected. So this is my message to all of you. That's why from the very beginning, I want you to have a better perspective of the research methods, of the research methods. Some of my colleagues say, Hasina, why you try to branch out to adapt empirical method in your research? We are from Islamic studies, you have so we are very philosophical, very textual. But I think it's very unfortunate if we, you know. So Hannah, even though you don't do empirical research at your masters, but you learn it and hopefully in future you are able to use it. Yeah, use it. Yeah, so it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, both are good. Yeah, both. Any
okay,
more question?
madam.
Yes. Yes. Is that a question or a thanking note?
Thank you.
Thanking note. All right. I just hear madam. So I thought you were asking the question. All right. So I mean very quickly, like I said just now, these methods have weakness, have strength, convenient sampling, very easy, right? Less expensive, less time. Yeah? But then it has selection bias. Of course, you ask your friend lah, you ask your parents lah, kan? So sample is not representative, yeah, and not recommended by descriptive or casual research. So, mm, it depends on the title again. Yeah? Depends on the title again. So judgment sampling will of course low cost, very convenient because like I said just now, oh sisters in Islam, you immediately know who you want to target, right? Not time consuming, ideal for exploratory. Okay, so you remember now. Say in future you are doing research on exploratory study. So the best type of sample would be judgment sampling. So for example, you want to explore the concepts of liberalism among feminist Muslim in Malaysia. So you have the uh, sisters in Islam, for example, as your sample. Okay, the weakness of it, you cannot make generalization. Of course lah, because this sample, this research is the findings only represent the sample. So you cannot say, oh, because sisters in Islam is like this, so all the feminists are like this. Cannot, because your findings is limited to sisters in Islam and therefore it's very subjective to sisters in Islam. Most likely the feminist in Malaysia is different from the feminist in Thailand, the feminist in Indonesia and the feminist in America. Okay, so you cannot make generalization. Sample can be, for quota sampling, sample can be controlled for certain characteristics, selection bias, no assurance. Yeah, because you are giving certain quota or certain, you define them by certain characteristic like I said just now, income bracket kan, higher income bracket, lower income bracket. So you have some kind of bias lah. Not necessarily those who are what you call that, those who are having higher income level kan. Like myself not higher income bracket but higher education. For example, yeah, maybe there are people who doing business kan, they do business, they have lots of customers kan, they opening restaurants, they didn't have much good education but they know how to business, to do business, so they have higher income, for example. So no assurance. So snowball can estimate rare characteristics, can estimate rare characteristics, yes, especially in terms of, like I said just now, family, divorce, parents, kan. So in society, of course they say now in a family you will have one person divorce in the family. So scary the statistics of divorce in Malaysia. Be careful In a family there will be one member in the family that will divorce. That's how the statistic is. Na'udzubillah So but then you can have these characteristics like in your respondents or in your sample because they have these characteristics. Like in Malawi just now, you have all the respondents, mixed marriage, but then the divorce and one of the parents either leave Islam or remain Muslim. Time consuming, yalah, because you depends on your respondents' feedback. Some of the respondents may be helpful, some never can. Okay, so your research progress is very much determined by the feedback from your respondents. Simple random sampling, easily understood, results projectable, or okay, you can kind of estimate what the findings are. What the findings are. Where are you going? And then difficult to construct sampling for frame, expensive, difficult to construct sampling frame, expensive, lower precision, no assurance of representativeness. Yalah. because you cover a very big type of samples, yeah. And then systematic sampling, the best is because can increase representativeness, easier to implement than simple random sampling because you have systematized them. Sampling frame not always necessary, okay, or you can always, you need not to have a sample frame pun if you have systematic sampling. Hmm. Say for example, yalah like just now the fifth customer kan, the fifth customer that in the line. So you need not to have, you know, a proper frame. You just go to Giant or the fifth person, the fifth person, the fifth person. Yeah? Can decrease representativeness. Yalah. Because you cannot gauge how many people go to Giant every day, right? Stratified sampling includes all important subpopulation precision. So this is one of the good thing because you first of course you have to study the population. So you try as much as possible. This is probability kan. You have to try as much as possible to cover them all. Difficult to select relevant stratification variables, not feasible to stratify on many variables and expensive. Of course, whenever you talk about big sample, mestilah very expensive. Okay? And cluster sampling, easy to implement, cost effective, yeah? Imprecise, difficult to compute and interpret. It's very difficult to gauge the result because you cluster from the big sample, you cluster them and then you choose from among the cluster. So it's quite tricky also to interpret. You know, for example, like just now, you know, northern, southern, eastern, and western, and then you cluster them some more. So, and then maybe you interpret those living in the big city have certain likings, those living in the rural have certain likings. Yeah? So that is your estimation. Your I mean, you expect that people living in the city will have certain likings. People in the kampung or in the rural area have certain likings. So this is your expectation, but not necessarily. Because you see, for example, my experience when I go to kampung, I found many people drive Honda. Honda is very expensive kan, but when I go to kampung, wow, people drive Honda. But in Kuala Lumpur, people drive Beza like myself. Okay, so stage 4, determine sample size. In order to generalize from a random sample and avoid sampling errors or biases, so you need to determine. Oh, this is also tricky, especially when you have bigger sample. Of course, there is mathematics that can help you. If you study SPSS will help you to calculate, yeah, but they are shortcuts. These are the shortcuts that we use when we do the research recently, FRGS research recently, um, because it's very difficult to gauge the population, you know, every zone. Yeah, so we just use this table and of course, when you describe your methodology, you have to bring this table in the methodology to justify why. For example, this is 1000, right? This is 1000. For 1000, 1000 population, the most tolerate number of samples with 95% confidence level of the margin error. Remember, I'm talking about the standard deviation, standard error just now. Uh, I mean, this person, what is his name? Jill. Jill has estimated that if you want your standard error to be 95%, you you can have 384 respondents at the most. At the most. The margin error of 5. This is a big lah, margin error of 5. But if you want margin error or even lower, then you need to have more. 9,513. So you have this, you can have the list 384 with the margin error of 5 and the confidence level of 90, 95%. I mean, you're confident uh, with the, with your sample, with your sample. But if you want the confidence level to be uh, what do you call that, higher, better, or higher, 99%, with more or less similar margin error, 531, yeah, so you can have 660 with 99% confidence level. So if you study statistics, you will be able to do this, provided that you have the overall population number of certain area. Like for example, you have IIUM kan. What did I see IIUM just now? 20,000 20, okay, over here 25,000 25,000. So if you have this number 378 respondents, that seems representative of the population. So 378, confidence levels 95 and margin error is 5. But if you have more money, then maybe you want to add, or you want confidence level 99%, you have, double the respondents, 643. Wow, but 643 is very challenging. Yeah? Even 100 is very challenging. Even 100 is very challenging. But inshallah you can do it. I mean, don't take IIM students lah. Maybe you can take uh, students from sciences background. Like the research that I did is my student did recently, master's student recently. So she studied Kuantan campus students, Kuantan campus students. Yeah, for example lah. Yeah. All right. And she didn't use SPSS. She didn't use quantitative. She used qualitative. She conducted interview. Okay. So normally interview will save you from facing big number of respondents. So collect data and response rate. I think this one you can read on your own. All right. Okay, that's about sampling. Okay. Um, that's about sampling. I want to share with you my slides now because they are for certain things that I want to explain with regard to the sample. Okay. Right, so I'm not going to repeat this. Okay, we go in a detailed manner. What are the characteristics of a good sample? Yeah. So what a good sample means? Yeah? A good sample, of course, this is the ideals. Yeah, the ideals in this. The true representative of the population corresponding to its properties. Yeah? So the population is known as aggregate of certain properties and sample is called sub-aggregate of the universe or the population. Okay, when you talk about, when you do sampling, remember the respondents, the people in your sample are called population. Yeah, population. And the people you have chosen to be your samples are called respondents. Yeah, respondents. And then a good sample is free from bias. So try not to interview, not to have your friends or your parents, yeah? Or someone you know lah to be your sample. Yeah? First one, you want to avoid prejudices, yeah, preconception, imagination, so on and so forth. Yeah? Sorry. A good sample is an objective one. Okay. A good sample maintains accuracy. Yeah. A good sample is comprehensive in nature. I mean, you try to find the best that fits the criteria that you want. Yeah? Economical, you want to also save money, especially you as students. Easily approachable. Um, Let me give an example. I think it is one of you, no? Where did I read this about? Yeah, I think I read from your research. Ah, this okay from my FYP student. Now I remember. She wanted to study the pure life society, movement in Malaysia, movement or religion, in Malaysia. So, and she wanted to study if pure life society promoted religious pluralism or transcendent unity of religion. Yeah. Wow, I think that is quite tricky because she cannot just ask, are you follower of transcendent unity of religion? Are you follower of religious pluralism? Because why? Because she has to break down the questions that reflect pluralism and reflect transcendent unity of religion. And of course, these questions are very challenging questions, trying questions because they're very high level questions. I'm not sure if the respondents are capable of answering the questions. So, I don't know. Suitable. Another one, I think Hana wants to study about the Muslims, what do you call it, MBB? MBB. So, how are you going to get the respondents also? I don't know. It's going to be very challenging for you, especially in Malaysia. This is very sensitive case, yeah. But maybe you can try Muslims in other parts of the world because I think in other parts of the world there are no regulations to restrict them. Like they can convert into Christianity uh, if they want. I mean, there is no single restriction. But in Malaysia, it's very difficult. Maybe
Yeah.
you want to have Singapore, if you know that this MBB is around in Singapore. Or you can still do in Malaysia provided that you can get the respondents. Lah. And the best for you is to have case study. Because for case study, you need not to have many respondents. Yeah. But then you have to make the respondent anonymous. Or you can have you can have case study and you can have apa tadi sample
Singapore.
snowball
Hmm.
yeah, but you cannot have many respondents.
Okay.
All right, so to be able to know if you manage to get respondents or not, there is another technique before the sampling. We will learn about this afterwards, inshallah. Okay. The size of good sample is such that it yields an accurate result. The probability of error can be estimated. That's why it is important to talk about the standard deviation or standard error, talk about level of confidence, margin of error. Why it is important? Because you want to produce reliable data. Okay, not only that, among the importance of research is to ask good questions lah, the right questions. But having the right questions but wrong sample, it ruin your research altogether. So you want to reduce the probability error, like I said just now, as if you're doing quantitative survey, and the higher the respondents, the better. For For interview method, qualitative study, okay, study you need not to worry so much about the probability of error because first of all you are not calculating, and secondly you're not generalizing. You see, you are not generalizing because a case study, for example, so your finding is based on that case study, like I said just now, sisters in Islam, right? So only to that particular group. So you're not going to make a general findings out of that, so it should be okay. But for quantitative research, it's very sensitive case that you really need to tackle these questions of probability of error. Yeah, the more the better. The more the better. A good sample makes the research works more feasible. Okay, remember this is also important. Your research has to be feasible. Feasible means researchable. Yeah, your research questions have to not only valid research questions, yeah, but also easy and practical lah for you to study. Yeah, Misbah especially. I'm so worried about Misbah now because I mean, this is very good topic, disabled, but how to make it feasible, you have to really think about it because either you have to find the respondents or you use snowball techniques, yeah. I don't know, but depends. Inshallah, hopefully your supervisor can help you if you are doing it field work. Yeah? But you're from Quran Sunnah. I must tell this frankly lah. I don't know if
Yes.
I have from Fiqh Usulul Fiqh here. But I'm not very sure how many lecturers in RKFQ and RKQS are exposed with field work.
Uh,
So that worries me. If your lecturer is open to have a co-researcher from, co-supervisor from human sciences, then I think that's the best solution for you. But
uh,
some lecturers do not want to have a co-supervisor from human sciences. So you see, that then maybe there is a problem. And some lecturers who are used to do library research, they are not open up to field work. So they will say lah, you just do field, library research, no need to do field work or something like that. So for RKFQ and RKQS, I cannot say much. Yeah? So you really need to work together with your supervisor and see how they can help you. But for RKUD, I think the lecturers are quite open. In fact, a number of our lecturers are having co-supervisor from HS. Yeah, so Alhamdulillah. But not all, but not all. But there are some good lecturers who are open to research methods because they know that the best method for particular research is to have fieldwork. Yeah. So a good sample has practicable. Okay, don't be too ambitious because your masters is only 2 years. Yeah. So say for example you have to take 2 semesters for your coursework. I don't know how many semesters you take your coursework, then you are left with 2 semesters. If you want to do field work, I would recommend interview would be best. If you want to do survey, try to make sure that you have identified reasonable number of respondents. Yeah? Because I'm afraid that one semester may be challenging for you to collect data. You will be surprised, be challenging for you to collect data, especially if you are not familiar with SPSS. But say for example, if you have the proposal approved in semester 2, then you have enough time to conduct quantitative study. For qualitative, for interview, I don't think it's difficult to handle. You can do it even though you are left with 2 semesters to write your research. But then you really have to have a good timeline. My dear students, you need to have a milestone in your research and try to be abide by your milestone. I don't know whether you practice it or not, but you need to have milestone because without the milestone, it's very difficult for you to make sure that you are capable of finishing your study on time. Yeah, you never know what will happen in future kan, pandemic lah. Maybe you fall sick ke, somebody in the family fall sick ke, or you get married ke, or you have a child, even though you are a husband, but I have a number of students who their wife give birth and their study are also affected because they're having a new member in the family. They have to, they have to help the wife. So you see a lot of possibilities. So it's better for you to have milestone and be abide by the milestone. I'm trying my very hard to help you to get a title. So, but what I can do is always remind in my class that you have to get a title. You have to get a title. Don't be overthinking and you choose for the title. You are not going to solve the world's problem. Remember that. Master thesis will not help you to solve the world problem. You're not going to be another Stephen Hawking with your master thesis. So forget about it if you want to make a breakthrough in your research. A master research will not make a breakthrough in the study. A master research is to help you to learn how to write an academic work, how to use resources, and how to arrange it in piece of academic work in 2 years' time or at most 3 years' time. Yeah, Husna, don't be overthinking to the extent that you are stressful. Yeah, read a lot of thesis. Then you'll be able to. And the reason why I think you get stuck with your literature review is because you are talking about something ambitious, something very high, kan? That's why you got yourself stuck. Yeah? Alright. Maybe it is easy for me to talk because I'm from the different planet. You're from different planet. Okay, let's get it on. Okay, size of sample just now. I want to show you there is also another. Why is it like this? Another table. This is Craigie and Morgan table. So Craigie and Morgan table. Alamak, why is it like this? Um. Okay, maybe because it is too. Patut pun. Because it is out of the radar. Okay. So this is Craigie and Morgan. Craigie and Morgan, remember the research I said just now, we follow this Craigie and Morgan. So let me see, for population, tak nampak. Okay, let me try to see. Uh, so here the last one for 1,000, just same like Gil just now, right? Gil or Jill. So 1 million population, 384 respondents. 384 respondents. Okay. So we can use this table to justify the number of respondents. So in case in future you have good funding, you can go to Craigie and Morgan. So don't forget lah this table. Okay, now I want to talk about pilot study. Before you have the sample, you conduct a pilot study. Okay, how many of you are in the WhatsApp group? Uh, apa? PG students WhatsApp group. Not many tau because I think we have like 200 over. Okay,
Yeah.
remember I distributed a Google form asking you to fill in the Google form. I want to see the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic to PG students' research progress. Okay, so for your example, that is a pilot study, my pilot study. Before I do the actual research, I do the pilot study. Actually, for you to conduct pilot study, you need only 30 respondents. Yeah, but for this one, I think I have 55. Alhamdulillah, I'm so happy with the number. So 30 is enough for a pilot study. So you do this in a smaller scale. Because why? Because you want to test the questionnaire. So you put down the question, you want to test whether your questions are rightly understood by your respondents. Even though you are doing interview, you can also do pilot study because you want to test whether your respondents understand the question or not. Yeah, so you see, in order to test the procedures and quality of responses. So, for example, in my pilot study, I have looked at the responses. I found that, alamak, male and female not so proportionate lah. I think I have 40 for a female. I think male not many. Um, I have 56. So now I remember 56 respondents. I think I have male 14. 14 male and 42 female. But I guess that is representative of the gender distribution lah for PG students. I don't know. I will check with CPS. Do we have more female than the male population? So if I know that the populations are male better, many more than the female, then my actual research I will have to get that proportionate number rightly, which means that my pilot I discovered that female respondents that are many than the male respondents. So you see, so the importance of pilot study estimate the cost of the main survey, yeah, help to test and establish procedures to be used in the main study. I think I have no problems with this. Help to discover the difficulties and shortcomings of the questionnaires. Yes, I have one question wrongly asked actually. But I think some of my respondents understood the question based on their responses. You know, one of the questions asked about rational ability. I'm not talking about their cognitive ability actually. I'm asking whether they can think rationally or not. Yeah, but I put the question not in accurate manner. I managed to correct the question. Some of the respondents get the right question, and so I put it thinking rationally instead of rational ability. So some of my respondents who answer after my correction will be able to address. Actually, in the real research, you cannot do that. Yeah, you cannot do that because the earlier respondents may get it wrong, but before I change the question, I look at the answers from my respondents and I know that they also understand the way I understand it. Only one respondent who say that, who seems to get confused with the question, and I think I know why he's confused with the question, and that led me to change the question. So you see, this is good with regard to the your research, doing pilot study. Okay. But when you do the actual research, you don't ever change your question in the midst of the research like I did just now. Especially when you have many respondents. That's why it is important to do the the pilot research so you know where you went wrong. So it may lead to new ideas not originally included in the formulation, so maybe actually, I want to test. Okay, this is my theoretical statement. My theoretical statement is that students who have research skills have lesser were likely to not be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is my theoretical statement. So, to say it simply, if you have good research skill, then the recent pandemic does not affect you or did not affect you because you can do your research. Still, you can do your research. Yeah. But then I will see based on this pilot because I can see that not necessarily. Maybe I've yet to examine that, analyze that. Not necessarily because I found that a number of students from IRK has very high tawakal. Very high tawakal. So, you know what, it's okay, the situation is like that, take it easy, even though the student is in extension, so he worry less. And I want to see whether he has research skill or not. So say for example, he does not have research skill, but he worry less. Yeah? So maybe if we have good number of them who do not have research skill but worry less, then my theory is not working. My theory is wrong. Because my theory is that those who have research skill worry less. But some of my respondents or good number of my respondents, if lah, didn't have research skill but they worry less also. Why? Because their degree of tawakal is very high and most of them come from IRK. Masya Allah. How do you find that? So it may help to discover the type of variation existing among the units of the population of interest. Okay lah. Alright. So let's take a look at this one before I go to the Q&A, and if we have time I will go to another slide. So I'm catching up actually. So steps in conducting survey, develop hypotheses. So my hypothesis just now, those with research skills have less worry less. Yeah, this is my hypothesis. Yeah, decide on type of survey. So I've decided that I'm going to do it. Survey. Yeah, but then I combine between open-ended question and closed-ended question. What open-ended and closed-ended? We'll listen to it later when we discuss quantitative and qualitative research. Write survey questions. Yeah. For this survey question, I discussed with one friend only. Yeah, one friend only. So she suggested that rational ability. She came from education. She even used the word cognitive ability, rational ability. Yeah. So, but then when I put that question, I noticed wrong lah to put rational ability. So I get back to my older question, thinking rationally. Yeah. Decide on response categories. Okay, PG student, design layout. So I have design layout for my study, like I said just now. I want to see if there is, if research skills is a moderating factor for students for students progress. Yeah, for students progress. So I say moderating factor kan, but then you cannot imagine my research design lah, but maybe I can say, okay, these are the variables, but the research skill is one of the variable. It's not in this variable, in the A, B, C, but it is in the variable B, and this is progress of research. So you see whether these variables affect positively or negatively the research progress, and I want to see the what you call that, this research skills, whether it moderates the research progress or not. Okay, so that's the design of my research. Yeah. Plan how to record the data, pilot test, survey instrument, decide on target population. Yeah, I mean this I've done now. Pilot test survey. So instrument, what instrument I use? I use Google Form. Yeah, so for your pilot study, you can also use Google Form. Even though you are using SPSS, you can still use Google Form. So beautiful. Because you know what, pilot study you're not going to use the data for your research. You only use the tool, the instrument to test the reliability of your instruments. Yeah, the reliability of your instruments, the reliability of your method, the reliability of your questions. Okay, decide target population. Okay, now after I've done my pilot, I will have to decide. Like just now I said kan, oh kenapa ni female many than male? I want to see the population. If there are many male, I should not have more female respondents. I should have more male respondents. Get sampling frame. So now I know I cannot have only IRK students. I will have to have proportionate number of respondents. I cannot have only master students. I should have, proportionate number of masters and PhD. I think I have masters more. Of course, there are more master students than PhD students, but I think I have 18 PhD students and berapa? 18 and another 38. Yeah, 38 master students. Decide on the sample size. So I need to know the number of PG students. So if I'm not mistaken, the PG students at our kuliah is 1,000 over, maybe 1,500. Last time we used to have 2,000, see. So if I want to use Kreji, I have to look at 1,000, how many respondents should I have? Say 1,000. Wow, 1,000 is already 370. I should have 300. Oh, sorry, bukan. 1,000. Number 1,000. Oh, sorry. 1,278 respondents. 1,278 respondents. Okay, bear with me. Sorry, bear with me. And then, apa lagi? Locate respondents, conduct interviews, carefully record the data if I want to do interviews lah. Uh, enter data into computer. So now it is my stage now. I have to enter the data into computer. Then I have to check again after you have, I think I have half way keying the data in the Excel. I didn't use SPSS Excel, and then I noticed some of the data are misled. So I have to redo again, because upon checking, I think I have figure figure out funny numbers. I'm not confident with the numbers, so I have to redo again. Perform statistical analysis of the data. Yeah, I will have to analyze the data. Describe methods and findings in research reports. Okay, remember methodology. Your thesis put the methodology. In methodology, I don't know if I mentioned this or not. I'm going to mention it again. If I've mentioned this in methodology, you have to explain two. First, methodology of gathering the data. Second, methodology of method of analyzing the data. So, what method you use to collect the data? Library ke, interview ke, survey ke, ya, textual study ke, ya. And then method of analyzing the data. Do you need to comparative analysis, historical analysis, what else? Critical analysis, the most used lah. Critical analysis or historical analysis, yeah. Or if you are using SPSS, then you need to tell what type of analysis. Maybe advanced statistical analysis. You're using regression interpretation, regressive analysis method, multivariance, or ANOVA, for example. Yeah. So that will give merit to your thesis because you tell the examiner, this is how I get the data and this is how I analyze the data. Because sometimes when I look at the thesis, I found student only reports how they record the data or they collect the data. He didn't explain how they analyze the data. Whereas, what we look so much is also the analysis of data. Present findings to others for critique and evaluation. So don't think that your thesis is infallible. People can contest your findings. Alright, people can contest your findings. So you are not going to present a magnum opus. Yeah, so you are still subject to be questioned. From academic point of view. Yeah, but this also does not mean that you can be very negligence in your research. You have to be systematic. You have to try the best possible. Identify the best method. Yeah. But do not be defensive lah, especially in defense. Yeah. In proposal defense, don't try to be very defensive. Yeah. You'll be very defensive. In front of you are lecturers who are experienced researchers. So they will not have good ideas on you. There is a case recently, a student very defensive of his thesis. He even wanted to sue the examiner because the examiner gave him a major correction, PhD thesis, and this person thought he's very clever. He wanted to, he challenged, he said, if he didn't want to do the corrections, he was given major correction that is supposed to be 1 year, but then he submitted the corrections in not even in 1 month. So can you just imagine what type of corrections did he do? So when the examiner said that you have not incorporated my suggestions, he was very angry. So he charged the examiner lah, and then he said, going to do legal lah, bring the embassy and whatnot. So, don't delay your study. What happened to this person, they still have to appoint the third examiner. Suit him best lah. So, have to appoint third examiner, take some more time lah. Right? Ah, okay. So, don't be defensive. Open but then normally in RKUD lah, whenever we give opinion, we will leave it to the supervisor to discuss with you. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's you who is responsible to your research. Yeah, and I mean, of course, your supervisor also. I mean, if you get me as your supervisor, I must say that I take your research seriously lah, because I think you will carry my name. Yeah, you will carry my name. I don't want many supervisees because I'm afraid I will not be able to do justice to my supervisor. Alright, so but then you will have hard time with me. So that's why I think not many students write with me because I will be very, very meticulous in reading. Alright, so any questions?
In chat box, one question.
No question, eh? No
Yeah,
question.
one question in chat box.
Come again or in chat box? Sorry, I didn't notice. More proposal defense. What we should include in there? What is the date for the mock proposal defense?
17.
Next
Of,
class, ma'am.
17th of December. Our last class, when is our last class?
Maybe in January.
30,
Right?
31,
No.
31st December.
31st December, right? So let's postpone the. Uh, did I make the mock the defense? I didn't ask you to record that one. I didn't ask you to record that one. I asked you to do it in synchronous meeting. Is it?
The record 3-minute thesis, madam.
I asked you to record, right, and submitted to me, right?
Yeah, for
Uh, we are not going to do that in class, right?
There is one in class presentation, and there is one we were recording 3 minutes. There
Yeah,
is two.
Okay.
Oh,
The
We have
record, okay, the
Yeah,
record
don't
was
worry.
3-minute thesis. Okay, because
Yes.
you know what, we didn't cover. I think, okay, first, so obviously we will not be able to do it on the 17th. If we are going to hold it in class, then we are going to do it on the 24th of December. Yeah. But as of now, lah, I don't think I'm going to do it in class. Maybe you need to record it. Thank you for asking, Misbah. Maybe you
Okay,
need to record it.
only
Ah,
recording.
record. So
Jazakallah.
the reason I wanted to do it in class because I want everybody else to learn from each other. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but then it's not impossible. It is impossible lah because we have not covered some other topics. Tau. I'm so worried. And then, so it means that you have to record and then you submit to me, just like the 3 minutes.
Okay, so
Okay.
it means,
So
ma'am,
it will be presentation and record it.
we will
Hmm.
we will make only on record, right?
Come again?
We'll make it record only,
Record. Yes, Karim, Abdul Karim, yes.
Yes,
not
the first we will make PowerPoint and record it, and the
Uh,
second 3 minute record also.
but the 3 minute thesis, you need not to have PowerPoint.
I know that.
Hmm.
Okay.
So for this one, you do the what do you call that the slides. Maybe 3 slides is enough. 3 slides. Okay. What you need to have in your mock defense, pretend that you are defending your proposal in the department.
Okay, 3 slides only.
Yeah, 3 slides. Maybe RO statement of problem, first slides, and then RORQ, second slides, and then methodology.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
And
you.
don't forget lah, don't forget in the statement of problem, maybe you want to talk, you want to say about what is new in your research. Because normally in Usuluddin, Prof. Mumtaz will ask, what is new in your research, brother?
Hmm,
He will ask this, what is new in your research? So,
Allah,
yeah.
I think it's
It's
new.
like,
I think all of it new.
all right. So that you will cover in your defense. Not long lah, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, 5 to 10 minutes. All right. So is that fair enough? 24 and 31st, we are going to have test. Yeah? Have we
ma'am.
conducted a test before? We have conducted a test, right? 10 marks. So we have another test, 20 marks. So we are going to have it on the 31st of December. 20 marks. Yeah?
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry, I didn't get your point.
Come again, Ms. Bah.
20 marks for what?
For the test. We
Uh,
have test, right? We have
so
test. We have yet to do this test. So I'm going to do this test in the last class, 31st of October. Well, I'm not going to do it synchronously. I'm going to give you time to answer.
same day we have a submission, so it will be
Yeah, like last time lah. Maybe give you 3 days, or maybe it depends. I haven't designed the question yet. Maybe 24 hours.
because
Yeah.
31st we have a submission is a final draft.
Oh, the final draft. And you
Yeah,
submit.
so is it
Yeah.
possible to after final draft, ma'am?
Come again?
Our test, is it
Mm-hmm.
possible to after final draft? That would be more flexible. Because otherwise
Okay.
this month we have a
Okay.
three more activities, big activities,
Um,
17, 24,
the
21.
Okay, let me check with the due date for submission of carry marks. You know what? Because lecturers have to submit 60% of the carry marks before the end of the class.
Yeah, this is our
So
cordial
you
request to you. Is it possible? So final after final draft, we will be sit for test, inshallah, if possible.
that's why I think it's quite difficult for me because all
Yes, sure.
lecturers have to submit the marks. If we do the submission later, later, then you will not be able to get your 60 marks. Do you understand me or not? So, okay, but if you test, I thought that if you can submit the 20 marks, test is 20 marks, 14 marks. I guess should be okay. I guess should be okay because 20 is 40, right? The other 60 marks. But then your 3 minute thesis, when are you going to submit that? Did
24.
you do? Okay, earlier.
Yeah,
So we have
24,
test,
17,
we
and
have
31.
20 minutes, we have test, we have 20-minute thesis, and then we have one test already, right?
Yeah.
So 20, 30 minute thesis is 15 marks, is it? 15 or 20?
For what?
The 3 minute thesis,
15
15.
on 5.
So
That one 1 5 and this one 1 5. Total 30.
35, 35, 35, 45. Okay. Where are the rest of the marks? Never mind. Uh, let me try to gauge. Yeah. If I can have your carry mark 60%, then the other 40% can be later. Do you understand what I mean? No.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
I have to arrange. Actually, I have arranged properly, but then because of the delay in covering the title, kan, I mean the course outline, because I need to have the mark 60% before actually the last class, before the last class. Let me see. All right. All right. So, shall we go to the next discussion?
Salat.
Huh? Who is that? But we 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 spare. We now it's
No,
seven
just my muazzin is calling. That's what I'm saying.
7:20. 7:30. We stop.
Inshallah, inshallah, no
Okay.
problem. Just I'm kidding. My
7:30
muazzin is azana.
because you see we have to actually stop at 8 p.m. Tau. If unless if you want to pray and then we come again.
Inshallah, proceed, ma'am.
Proceed, eh? I don't think you like to come again. All right.
No, no, no. We are always with you. Inshallah.
All right. Let's take a look at qualitative and quantitative research. Yeah. So, okay. If you are doing field work, can you see the slides? You can see the slide, right? If you are
Yes.
doing if you are doing library research, that is also qualitative research. Yeah. Uh, the qualitative research not only the field work, not only interview, but library research and analytical research is also qualitative research. So it's a subjective assessment of attitudes, opinion and behavior. This is the definition given by people in empirical study lah. Yeah. It generates non-quantitative data. What is important for qualitative research is that it does not involve any numbers for from or data which are not subjective. So you need not to do rigorous quantitative analysis, no SPSS, no SPSS whatsoever, or SEM, or Rush model, or Smart PLS. Yeah. Now, quantitative research is when you generate the data based on the quantitative survey, based on the quantitative survey of form, and you make a very rigorous analysis, quantitative analysis, yeah, very formal and rigid fashion. Formal and rigid fashion because you have certain interpretative analysis method that you have to follow. Like I said just now, regressive lah, multivariance, ANOVA lah, and then apa lagi? Regressive, correlation, relational. These are very rigid type of analysis whereby you have certain methods of doing the analysis. So research method, this quantitative method is a method that explains phenomenon by collecting numerical data that are analyzed using mathematical based methods. Yeah, for example, I want to know whether the population understand the meaning of religious pluralism or not, like a research done by my student just now. So I cannot just ask them, do you understand what is religious pluralism? Because that will involve a qualitative answer, right? I will have to break down the meaning of religious pluralism into testable question. For example, one one of the example that I can show, if I want to know my respondents' belief in religious pluralism. So item number one, for example, all religions are equal. So you have yes, strongly agree, you know, apa, fairly agree, or you want to say not applicable or indifferent, and then disagree or strongly disagree. So one, all religions are equal. And then number two, I put all religion teach, teach the same idea about God. Okay, so this is two. Religions is cultural factor. Number three. So because these are items, uh, okay, so uh, religions are human interpretations of God. You know, so these are the items that I break down from the meaning of religious pluralism to see if my respondents, um, you know, have the criteria, kind of the criteria, my respondents uh, believe or not in religious pluralism, because I break down the criteria of someone who takes or who believe in religious pluralism. It's very challenging lah to develop the questions, but challenging but interesting. Okay. Now, um, most of the time for qualitative method, you have three types of data collection method. Yeah? Either you want to do observation, yeah? Either you want to do in-depth interview, or either you want to do focus group discussion. Observation is good. For example, if you think that interviewing the respondents will not lead to the objective of your research. Maybe, for example, like my student just now who wants to study the pure life society, maybe it is good for her to adopt the observation method instead of interview method. Yeah. Uh, so maybe because the temple actually invite everybody to come, Muslim ke Christians ke everybody kan. So maybe the students should go there and sit down and see how the people of different religions behave at that temple. Observation method. The in-depth interview, you know how in-depth interview is, but of course for in-depth interview, you need to design the questions. Like, I don't know if Karim is going to interview anybody, yeah, but then you need to plan for the right questions to answer and be able to decide whether your question would be structured or half structured or not structured altogether. There are also situations where you can have, but the objective must be very clear, lah, eh? Otherwise you are difficult when you want to analyze the data. So you can also have a very cordial discussion with your respondents. But then that cordial discussions can lead to help you to find the objective of your research. For example, now when you are questioning old people, say for example you want to study about the old people, gerontologists, the old people in the old folks home. You cannot ask them, okay, uncle, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Very difficult for them to follow you. But then you have to, make a casual discussion with them. Where are you from? What your children doing? Where are they staying? Things like that. Then only you'll be able to get the data. So it depends lah on the respondents. Focus group discussion. Focus group discussion uh, is good if you have uniform type of criteria among your respondents. Like for example, my students did a research in Kuantan campus kan. So asking student from nursing, interviewing interviewing students from nursing, from medic, from dentistry, from science faculty. So she had all these group from different uh, kuliahs. Okay. But of course the students have more or less similar characteristics because they come from the same kuliah. Okay, so what is the strength? Of course, your research will be very detailed kan, insider's view of the field. Of course, from the Western perspective, this is the best, type of research because the research should be communicate what the respondents view or say or perceive, not the researcher's perceptions or view or opinion, but the respondents. Yeah? Possible relationship, cause effect and dynamic processes, of course, because you can ask, okay, why? You can also explore the 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 roots of the problems, for example, the roots of the problem. Yeah? Uh, uses descriptive and narrative style. In reporting, in the this is also important because I found that some of the lecturers they are not familiar with um, field work for with interview method. Yeah. So they ask the students, they very for example, this Malawi research just now, very good question, very good respondents, but there is no chapter on reporting the interview because the respondents, I mean the researcher straight away go to the analysis of the data. So I said, why you don't have the reports of the interviews, the descriptive reports of the interview? So if you interview your respondents, make sure that one chapter is allocated for reporting the interview, whereby you are going to describe, you are going to narrate. Yeah? And when you describe, sometimes you use the respondent's word. Uh, Verbatim to show the importance, or you want to highlight the way she responded, not you interpreting, but the respondents themselves said so it's not you saying, but the respondents said so. For example, the research in Malawi, this brother said, the father is very useless. The Muslim father is very useless. They are not responsible to the religion of the children, because after the marriage is dissolved, the father let the children to be with the parents, but the father is very irresponsible and useless because this is against the culture or the norms in the society, because the society is paternalistic society. Father is the leader of the family, but the researcher is questioning if the father is the important. I mean, the society practice parenting, paternal society. Why is it the father did not take the responsibility? Muslim fathers lah. Muslim father did not take the responsibility to look after the children after the marriage is dissolved. The father is very irresponsible. So this is what he said in his analysis. So you cannot say this. Yeah, you cannot say this in the analysis. You don't use this word. It's very irresponsible. If you want to exit, if you can say that, okay, some of the respondents agree that this behavior is irresponsible. Because it's not you saying it, but the respondent saying it. Yeah? But then in the analysis, in the concluding chapter, you can say that you found that most of the father did not take the responsibility to look after the children despite the paternal parenting or the paternal society as the norms in the society. So you are not judging, but you are stating the findings. Okay. So don't forget, if you are doing, try to have a chapter at least. If your supervisor say, no need a chapter lah, because I know that some supervisor who does not know empirical research, they will say no need, you just go to analysis. But try to have a subtitle on reporting the the what you call that, the interview. Because why? Because if you just show your analysis, like my difficulties when I read this thesis, I just read the analysis, I do not know where to refer. This is your analysis, maybe your interpretation, but your interpretation may be wrong. I want to know what the respondents actually say. I don't want to see your analysis first. I want to see what the respondents say. Okay. Okay, limitation because it is of subjective nature, it is difficult to apply conventional standards. Okay, you cannot make generalization definitely, from interview method or FGD. You can only state the situation, okay, but cannot make generalizations. Context situations, event, condition, interactions can be replicated, nor generalization be made to a wider context. Okay, you can, I mean, if you, for example, find that, wow, very good lah, this research question, very good, respondents very good, not like the one conducted in Kuantan, right? My student, but then you say, oh, this is very good lah, but this is research in Kuantan. I want to use the same questions, I want to use the same method, FGD, same question, but I want to conduct in Gombak. This is okay. This is good. This is also possible because you have different sample altogether and you want to test the same question using the same method. Time required for collection, analysis and interpretation is lengthy. So this is one of the limitations of uh, of the method. Okay, I forgot to say something about the replication of the researchers. Now you can replicate, but still you cannot make generalization. You cannot make generalization. But for quantitative method, you can. Say for example, recently when I conducted a research in population in Kuala Lumpur, we asked Jakim to fund our similar research, but we are going to hold it in different zone outside Kuala Lumpur. And with more respondents and of course more money lah kan. So if we have more respondents, the standard error can be controlled, confidence level is high, we can make generalization. Alright, because there is quantitative. Alright, so I think that's about it. Next week we discuss quantitative method. Yeah. Have a nice weekend because tomorrow is public holiday. I cannot wait because I have two theses to read. Yeah, I haven't finished. Last week I said I finished one. I'm reading one more. And next week I have a conference. Yeah, and I'm reading your literature review. And I'm recording my lecture for students in Singapore. 6 lecture to be recorded. So definitely I will have a very long weekend this week. So thank you so much my students for your patience and inshallah I'll see you again in next class inshallah. Yeah. Alright, are you still around or you're sleeping? Everybody so quiet. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Hassan, I'm waiting for your work, yeah, Hassan.
Yes, madam.
Alright, okay.
I yes, madam. I feel difficulty some literature review. I read a lot, but I feel difficulty how to write literature review.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
It's clear.
Okay, I will share with you one sample and I hope you can try to read and understand with your heart.
Yes,
Uh, with your
but
heart.
yes, but I write what I understand. What I understand.
Okay. I don't know how to say lah. But research is an art. You see, you need to get the art. I mean, I can teach you, I can tell you many, many times, but it is an art in itself. So you need to get, need to acquire the arts of writing. But it's okay, don't worry. It's okay at your level to have wrong literature review, wrongly done. It's okay, don't worry. Yeah, because you are students. But if you are at my
But
level,
I'm worried, teacher.
don't worry, don't over stress. I mean, you submit me the first draft, I can correct you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I give you ask, I put question, and then you know lah that you're not doing it right, and you try to answer my question, because when you answer my question, it means that you are going back to the track. Yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, okay. I don't know, because if I were to promise you, I mean, we can have virtual session together. But we really have to plan, because yeah, I did that for my undergraduate student. Yeah.
Yes.
But cannot be long enough, because I have also a lot of work to do.
Yes.
Yes.
But if you can plan, you can have like 20 to 30 minutes of personal consultation. Yeah.
Yes.
Why
All
not is
right.
face-to-face class as we are living in campus?
Yeah, this weekend not lah. I think until 14, I'll be very very busy, because
No
I have
problem, inshallah.
to do everything until 14. After that, it should be okay.
Okay,
All
madam.
right, all right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
all. Thank you very much. Let's go and pray. Okay, assalamualaikum everyone.
Salam. Thank you, madam.
Okay, bye.
Madam.
Bye.
Walaikum salam. Terus, madam,